Greetings, fellow adults. Tino here, and I have a question for Zimbabweans out there. Zimbabweans who are currently living abroad. If you had to drop your Zimbabwean citizenship to get a South African one, or whichever country that you're currently staying in, which city would you settle in? Don't worry, Zimbabweans, you don't have to actually drop your citizenship to get a South African one because both countries allow dual citizenship, which is pretty cool, but that wasn't always the case, and you never know, Zimbabwe might just change its laws again. Anyways, I would personally settle in Cape Town because it's a really beautiful city and it's the only city that I've actually lived in. I highly doubt there's other cities that are better, but if you disagree, feel free to leave a comment. I'd love to hear your opinion on that. I posted a similar question to my Twitter followers and my Instagram followers, and the results were quite interesting actually. On Twitter, out of 53 votes, 77% voted yes, and on Instagram, out of 78 votes, 81% voted yes. Interesting responses there. I do acknowledge it's a very small sample space and these are just my followers, but let's find out why people feel this way. Employment flexibility. More jobs are going to be available for you because, well, there's a couple reasons. The biggest being that most South African companies simply don't want to hire foreigners. There are a lot of stress to deal with. It's usually just easy to just stick to South Africans. You're likely to get better salaries too because you have more leverage when negotiating as compared to, if you're a foreigner, you have very limited options, which means you have no negotiating power. You have the freedom to work for whoever you want, whenever you want, for as long as you want. If you have a work visa, for example, you have to reapply for that visa if you switch jobs, even in the same company. It's also a lot easier to start your own business because you don't have the same restrictions that foreigners face when starting businesses. Like, for example, you don't need to have 5 million rands invested in your business. You don't have to employ South Africans, all those other restrictions. If you are a permanent resident, you don't have to do all those things. Better access to education. Foreigners pay a lot more in fees simply because they're foreigners. It's just a thing. Can't even justify the fee. Study visas have a lot of restrictions, like you can't work for more than 20 hours a week, you can't work during holidays, and you also can't work and study part-time, and they only give study visas to full-time students. There are probably a lot more restrictions depending on what you're studying. However, if you're a permanent resident, you are pretty much, a local person. You don't pay international fees. You can study whatever you want, whenever you want, wherever you want, and you can study part-time whilst you're working a full-time job. That's not something you can do if you're a foreigner. You don't qualify for NSFAS. That's only something citizens can qualify for. However, you do get access to a lot of bursaries and scholarships. You also get access to certain degrees that are reserved for only citizens and permanent residents. For example, medicine. You can't study medicine if you're a foreigner. Property and real estate. Foreigners are allowed to purchase and own property in South Africa under their own name. Surprisingly, that's a thing. However, it becomes a problem if you want to apply for a home loan. See, most of us don't have cash just lying around to buy a house, so we'd go to a bank and apply for a loan. If you're not a South African or if you don't have permanent residency, you can't apply for a home loan in SA. If you're lucky, you might get a bank that will give you a 50% loan. So that means you have to put down 50% of the loan you're asking for, which is still a lot of money. So, if you have a good credit score and you have permanent residency, you can even get 100% bond at very low interest rates. Government services. The South African government has a lot of social benefits for their citizens and permanent residents, and these include child support grant, care dependency grant, old age pension, disability grant, foster child grant, unemployment insurance fund. I'm sure I left out a few that aren't listed on the South African government. However, you get access to a lot of these benefits if you're a permanent resident. And because SA is also part of the Commonwealth and BRICS, you get access to whatever benefits residents of those countries get access to. Permanent residency for your family. You will find Americans calling this chain migration, but essentially what happens is if you have permanent residency in South Africa, then your wife, your father, your mother, and your children, they all qualify for permanent residency too, which is pretty cool. So that means that when they get their permanent residency, they can do the same thing for their own immediate family. The reasoning behind this law should be pretty obvious. If you are moving permanently to a different country, it only makes sense for your family to also move there with you. Otherwise, what's the point? Less stress. The amount of paperwork and red tape you have to go through to get a visa for South Africa is quite insane. Like, the thought of it is low-key triggering. Of course, this only applies to African foreigners because, well, I don't know actually, that might make an interesting video. But Europeans and all these other Western countries, they don't experience the same stresses and long waiting periods that we have to. You don't have to leave the country because you've overstayed or because your visa expired. You miss a lot less opportunities because you're stuck somewhere there waiting for your visa to come out. Home affairs people are not the best people to deal with, eh? And because you don't ever have to leave the country, that means you have a lot less interactions with these people. Those are the 6 main benefits you get as a South African permanent resident permit holder. What if you want to upgrade to citizenship after 5 or so years? Well, there's 3 main benefits that come with that. The first one being more government funding and services. NSFAS and various other programs run by the government are only available for South African citizens. You know, I don't think you can even work for the government if you're a foreigner. Right now, there's COVID-19 funding from the government to help people, you know, live during these rough times. And I've seen tweets from people suggesting that these benefits should only be available to citizens and not anyone who's foreign. Unsurprising stance there. Voting. You get the right to vote for your president and your local government, a privilege that only citizens get to enjoy. You also get to officially call South Africa your home and complain about potholes and service delivery because you voted and you pay taxes, you know, that kind of thing. Passport. The South African passport is one of the most powerful passports in the whole world. You get access to at least 100 countries without the need of a visa, which is pretty cool, and an additional 40 countries where you can apply for visa on arrival. Some of these visa-free countries include South Korea, Singapore, the Bahamas, Hong Kong, Brazil, and Ireland, just to mention a few. And for comparison purposes, the US passport gives you access to at least 118 countries visa-free, and the Zimbabwean passport, my beloved country, gives you access to 40 countries without the need of a visa. Pretty cool, right? Now, the last and the best benefit of all, less xenophobia. Let me know in the comments if I left out anything. I did a lot of research for this video, but I wouldn't be surprised if I forgot something. You know, there's a lot of things out there. I find out new things all the time. Like the video, and before you leave, make sure to check out this video. YouTube is very confident you're going to like that one. If you've watched that one, maybe check out this one here or this video. If you've watched all this content, maybe click here to subscribe, and I will see you next week. Okay, you have a good day.